Let's stay with this particular theme and speak to Business Day political editor Hajra Omarjee and SABC News senior political reporter Samkele Maseko. Thank you so much to you both for your time. I'll start with you, Hajra. Looking back 10 years on, the EFF, of course, a very big, forming in Marikana, and we know what was happening at the time. What kind of EFF is going into this weekend's celebrations?
It's always good to see you, Bungiwe. And, I can't believe it's been 10 years. I can't believe it's been 10 years since the EFF was formed. And just before that, the ANC chucked Julius Malema out, and he stood with the Marikana miners on that kopi as they fought for a living wage. The party has really beat the odds, and it is a momentous moment for the EFF. Without a doubt, it has done what many others have failed to do. Julius Malema, Floyd Shivambu, and others have shown the ANC that it's not so cold outside the party, and it has showed consistent growth in every election. Unfortunately for the EFF, if the elections were won on Twitter, it would be the governing party. It was a necessary irritant during the Zuma period in office. The question is can it remain relevant post the Zuma period? And I think the policy heads, the likes of Floyd Shivambu, the likes of Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi, have got to step forward to provide answers to some of the country's biggest economic problems, play a greater oversight role in terms of fixing our SOEs for the party to remain relevant and grow in this election.
And Samkele, right at the back of that, I mean, you look at the fact that right now there are so many, challenges that South Africa is contending with. At the same time, you are even looking at more political formations that have joined the fold. Going into next year's elections, one wonders, though, what does all of this then mean for the EFF?
Well, Bungiwe, what it certainly shows is that the EFF has done what other parties such as the United Democratic Movement, UDM, other parties such as the Congress of the People, other parties such as the Inkatha Freedom Party have failed to do over successive elections, which is to show electoral growth. But the EFF's electoral growth is a huge threat at this point in time with the formation of the Patriotic Alliance, the formation of Action SA. We saw Action SA eating into the EFF's voter base in Johannesburg, where the EFF lost a number of seats in the Johannesburg Council, which went to the Action SA, and those other seats coming from the ANC and also from the Democratic Alliance. So the EFF is poised with a challenge now, as my colleague Hajra Omarjee has mentioned, that it needs to redefine itself post the Jacob Zuma era. It was the era of populist politics, the era of disrupting in parliament. That era is a thing of the past, particularly when you look at the current political epoch and conjuncture that South Africa is currently faced with. Majority of business, majority of labor seemingly are in favor of the incumbent president of the African National Congress. Just today, you saw about 14 CEOs of big corporate establities pledging their support to help service delivery with the government in order to roll it out within South Africa. So it tells you that the establishment, those whom are captains of industry, still have some sort of support for President Cyril Ramaphosa. But when you look at the economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, Floyd Shivambu, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, Fana Mokoena, all of those EFF think tanks, they've got to go back to the drawing board, redefine the EFF on how it will be their struggle going forward and how they will position themselves, particularly knowing the changing political environment that South Africa is in and the lack of voter apathy that we have. We just look at the 2021 local government elections, the lowest voter turnout in history. And Julius Malema always says that in order for the EFF to win elections, the EFF needs to grow its own voter base, and that voter base will see new entrants of new registered voters on the database whom will be loyal to the EFF, as you currently have 13 or 14 or so million South Africans that are currently loyal to the African National Congress. You see those 3 million or so voters that are currently loyal to the Democratic Alliance, and the EFF is currently faced with about 1.1 loyal voters of the EFF, and they need to strategically grow that voter base in order to be an official opposition within the country and ultimately to take over the African National Congress. But their biggest mission at this point in time, which they've done a significant dent to the ANC voter base was to drop the ANC under 50% in the last local government elections in the country. Can they also be able to do that nationally will be their true test, as they are also poised to be one of the kingmakers in provinces such as the Northwest Province, Rustenburg, where they were yesterday, where they were formed in Marikana. They are looking at becoming the governing party in the Northwest, as they are currently the official opposition. They go to the Free State. They are looking at causing an upset there as well. KwaZulu-Natal saw the EFF's greatest growth. The EFF's biggest cedar in the last elections was Gauteng and was KwaZulu-Natal, and also their biggest improvement was also in Mpumalanga provinces. Those are the three provinces that they are looking at growing the most in the next election. You go to Limpopo, the hometown, the home province of Floyd Shivambu, who hails from the Malamlele areas of Limpopo. You go to Julius Malema, coming from the Peter Mokaba area, which is I'm just forgetting the town where Julius Malema is from, in Tishigo. You saw the EFF disbanding the province there and installing a new structure in Polokwane as well, where he's from, installing a new structure, saying that the EFF in Limpopo, then led by Josi Butane, was not performing at the capabilities that that province can perform at.
Now, Hajra, there are some, of course, who are saying that for them, the party hasn't proven itself enough when it comes to governance. Others are saying that it needs to look at its own internal dynamics, particularly when it comes to its own internal democracy.
Well, I think democratic elections have been a part of the EFF. We saw the likes of Dalium Kofo, for example, try to take on Floyd Shivambu, the deputy president of the EFF. I don't think there's an issue with democracy within the party, but there is a kind of authoritarian type of leadership, which I know Julius Malema believes is necessary, especially in a new party formed out of factional politics in the ANC, and to prevent factional politics from the ANC actually succeeding him. But in terms of the EFF's success going forward, if I were in the EFF, I would talk about nothing else but transformation, because I don't think the governing ANC is leading that battle anymore. And I think that we've seen the Democratic Alliance, which is the second biggest political party in the country, consistently go to court in separate applications to try to challenge transformation legislation, in the hope that if it strikes down the Employment Equity Act or BEE or affirmative action, that all transformation legislation will be declared illegal. If I were the EFF, I would be talking about transformation, because if you look at the highest levels of economic growth in South Africa, it happened when you had the highest levels of transformation, compliance in the public and the private sector, and that was pushed unapologetically by former President Thabo Mbeki. I recently delivered an address, or was speaking to the lawyers at Weber Wenzel, and I asked the room of lawyers who they support, and I was surprised to find how many people in that room actually supported the EFF, and that is because black professionals, lawyers amongst them, simply do not feel represented by the system of a political oligarchy or patronage politics in either the African National Congress or the Democratic Alliance. But it's certainly a very big test for the EFF next year, going into elections in the post-Zuma era, and we will see whether they manage to grow.
And that's a huge test, Hajra, as you say. Samkele, there's of course developments around some party leaders at various leadership levels, who will not be attending the celebrations this weekend for failing, to keep their end of the bargain when it comes to organizing some of the buses there. Some say this was too harsh, while others say this is accountability in action. What has the party said?
When you look at the economic freedom fighters, when they were inceptualized and formed, Julius Malema was clear from the onset that those who become public representatives of the EFF have to fit in the bill in economically and financially supporting this particular vehicle, because the EFF had no struggle stalwarts, the EFF had no known business people wanting to associate with it when it was formed. You look at how Edwin Mazzotti was able to provide the 500,000 rand initial registration of the economic freedom fighters. Nowadays, you've got business people who fund the EFF but want to remain anonymous because they don't want to be known by capital. They don't also want to be known by the governing party, as they will be seen of betraying the liberation movement, which is the African National Congress. So the EFF is trying to build its own, if one may put it like this in the terms of former President Beki's, its own patriotic bourgeoisie that will be able to be patriotic and to be good enough and faithful enough to fund the EFF's programs. But that funding must not only start with good Samaritans within the business fraternity. It must also start with the EFF MPs, with the EFF MPLs, with the EFF MCs, and the EFF councillors in various municipalities. You look at individuals like Vusi Khoza in KwaZulu-Natal, the former provincial chair, now EFF Kobiza, and also MP. He failed to bring a bus from his constituency where he's from to the EFF's 10th anniversary rally at the FNB. So if you were not contributing to this EFF's rally, you were simply cut out by the leadership of the EFF. As Hajra said, that you cannot build an organization by being too democratic. Some sense of dictatorial tendencies are needed to build an organization. Julius Malema always says, despite the EFF turning 10 years old, it is still in its formative stages. And when a party is still in its formative stages, there cannot be too much democracy. There must be relative democracy, but there must be a central point of command. When the president speaks, everybody has to toe the line of march. Unlike an organization like the Democratic Alliance, where you can stand up tomorrow and you speak out against the president or the leader of the Democratic Alliance, or you can have an organization like the ANC, where everybody has a view and speaks even after the president of that party has spoken. But in the EFF, there's command and control. Once the commander-in-chief of the EFF has spoken, all members of the central command team, of the PCTs, of the RCTs, of the BCTs, of the ZETs, they all follow through to what the commander-in-chief of the EFF has said. You look at how there was seemingly a splinter within the EFF when the likes of Kanyisile Litchfield Chabalala, the likes of Mpho Ramakato, the likes of Andile Mngutama, all rebelled against Julius Malema within the Economic Freedom Fighters. They were dealt with heavily by the Central Command Team and by the AFF's National People's Assembly, where they held their second People's Assembly, where Julius Malema spoke about those whom are put into the structures of the EFF to destroy the organization. But if you are seemingly looking at the trajectory of the EFF, and the role that the former liberation movement has failed to continue to play within transforming the economic landscape of the country. You go to the financial sector, you look at the salary discrepancies that are there between blacks and the white community. You find young white professionals driving expensive vehicles, getting hefty salaries. But if you go to the other hand, to black professionals, they're driving polos, permanent armed struggle, trying to open their windows, and it shows the salary discrepancy, the racialization of the pay system, of the salary system within the country. Those are the struggles that the EFF has taken. You look at the lack of transformation in the judiciary, in the law fraternity. Those are the struggles that the EFF has taken, which I've seen, where Hajra spoke about him saying that a number of lawyers are seemingly seeing a home in the Economic Freedom Fighters. You go to the Platinum Belt right now in Rustenburg, in Marikana, you look at the amount of support that the Economic Freedom Fighters has. You go to areas, rural areas like rural provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, the growth that the EFF has shown. You come to a highly dense and populated province like Gauteng, you go to the townships, you go to the informal settlements, you see the support that the EFF has gained because day in and day out, they are speaking the language of the downtrodden and the poor. Is it sustainable? Is it populist politics? Only time will tell.
And only time will tell indeed, as you know, there's been quite a lot of talk even about the new formations looking into next year's general election. But let me thank you both for your time. These conversations will continue, of course, even throughout the weekend and beyond, as you know, the EFF marks 10 years. And we can, as Mzwandile was talking to Kenny Mapanga a little earlier on, that we can expect that Saturday could be the official campaign and really telling us what could be coming in the lead up to next year's elections. Lord Semi, thank you both for your time. Business Day political editor Hajra Omarjee and SABC News senior political reporter Samkele Maseko.